Alright, what's going on everyone? In this video I'm going to show you how to upgrade the Rowan Fearless Sparkmage Planeswalker Deck. As always, do keep in mind that these are not intended to be tier 1 competitive decks. If you want that, consider checking out the latest tournament results. What we'll be doing is upgrading this deck card by card, sticking to this deck's themes, and doing it on a budget as we will not exceed the retail price of this deck with our upgrades. So the Rowan Fearless Sparkmage Planeswalker Deck is a red-white Tribal Knights deck, as you can see with cards like Venerable Knight, Inspiring Veteran, and Acclaimed Contender. The Venerable Knight gives a +1/+1 counter to another knight when it dies, Inspiring Veteran is a lord for knights, and the Acclaimed Contender lets us dig through the top of our deck for more knights. Oh, and in case you're wondering, there aren't high resolution scans for Eldraine cards yet, so I'm using a combination of low resolution scans and images yanked out of the Magic Arena client, so apologies for that. Anyway, the exclusive cards that come with the deck, the cards you can only get by purchasing it, are Rowan herself, along with Rowan's Bodyguard and Rowan's Stalwarts. And as always, there are some pretty bad cards in the deck. Things like Knight of the Keep and Prized Griffin are pretty bad, and there are plenty of better cards we can play instead of these, which is exactly what we're going to do in this video. We're going to pull cards like this out of the deck and replace them with just much better stuff. And of course we'll be doing it on a budget. So let's get started. First off, I want to take out 2 Knight of the Keeps and replace them with 2 Acclaimed Contenders. This is pretty easy. They both cost 3 mana to cast, but the Acclaimed Contender is a 3/3, where the Knight of the Keep is a 3/2, so it's already better. But then we have those text boxes. One of them is super blank. I mean, technically it's not blank, the physical card has flavor text, but it's still super blank. The Contender, on the other hand, lets us look at the top 5 cards of our library and pull a knight from it to put into our hand, so not only do we just get a more powerful creature in general, but we get to keep filling our hand with more gas so we don't run out of stuff to play. So that's pretty good. And yeah, you can pull out some other stuff too, like artifacts and auras and whatnot, but yeah, it's just literally strictly better. So this is a no-brainer. Next, we're going to take out 2 Youthful Knights and replace them with 2 Inspiring Veterans. For some reason the deck only has 2 Inspiring Veterans, but we obviously want a full playset, and I think the Youthful Knight is a perfectly fine card to take out for the other 2. We're losing first strike, but we're getting an extra toughness, and we're getting it on a creature that will make the vast majority of the cards in our deck more powerful. So it seemed like a pretty good upgrade. It's a Tribal Knights deck, you want 4 Inspiring Veterans. Next, we're going to take out 1 Weaselback Redcap for 1 Venerable Knight. This one isn't as cut and dry because there are advantages to playing both of these, but I think the Venerable Knight is better overall because it's just going to be useful no matter what point of the game we draw it in, whereas the Redcap is mostly exclusively good in the late game. In the early game, it's only a 1 mana 1/1, which is nothing, and we probably aren't going to want to waste mana activating it in the first few turns because we're going to be playing stuff. It's basically only good when we have a big giant pile of lands and nothing else to do. Then we can dump all our mana into it and make it massive, but in pretty much every scenario, it's just kind of meh. The Venerable Knight is better early because it's more aggressive and we get value out of it if it trades with another creature in combat, but it's also useful in the late game just because it's an added counter to make something bigger once we get to the point where, you know, the big boys are swinging at each other in the late game. So I think the Venerable Knight is just more universally useful than the Redcap. So yeah, we're going with the Venerable Knight. And next we're going to take out a Rimrock Night for another Venerable Knight. So these are kind of similar. They're both high power creatures that die easily in combat, and they can both pump another creature, but once again I think the Venerable Knight is just more universally useful. The +1/+1 counter it puts on a creature is permanent instead of the temporary boost we get from Rimrock Night, and I really like having a 1-drop that can start attacking for 2 right away without worry since it has value when it dies. So yeah, I just really like the Venerable Knight, and I think we're going to go with that. Next up, we're going to take out the other 2 Rimrock Nights and replace them with 2 Worthy Knights. Worthy Knights provide a ton of value, because every time we play a knight, we create a 1/1 soldier token. And this is pretty cool, because we can build up an army of soldiers to attack the opponent with, or the tokens can be thrown in front of big creatures to chump block basically forever, while we wail away at the opponent on our attack step. They can also just gang up on a big creature, and we can kind of just throw them away willy-nilly because we're generating them for free anyway, which is kind of a dark concept, a knight creating soldiers that are just kind of throwaway, meaningless pawns, but whatever, that's what we're going to use them for. Next up, we're going to take out 2 prized griffins and replace them with 2 Embera Sky Blazers. So the Sky Blazers have flying on our turn, so if we are attacking, we're basically trading a 3/4 flyer for a 4/3 flyer, but it costs 1 less mana. So not only is it attacking for more damage, but it's also doing it a turn earlier. Plus, since the Sky Blazer is actually a knight, it'll get powered up by Inspiring Veteran, as well as producing a token with Worthy Knight. So whereas the Griffin is just a 3/4 flyer all the time for 5, we're getting a 4/3 flyer when we attack for 4, that can potentially be a 5/4 flyer or bigger, and also give us a 1/1 token if we have Worthy Knight. So it's just a whole lot better. Then also when it attacks, you can pay 3 mana to give your creatures +X/+0, where X is the number of opponents you have, which is probably just always going to be 1, but still, it's a free ability tacked onto a creature that's just already better to begin with. I would play this card over the Griffin even if it didn't have that ability, and just having that little, pay 3, get +1/+0 isn't bad, and also it doesn't specify knights, so it will actually pump up your soldier tokens from Worthy Knight, so that's not bad. Definitely a whole lot better than the Griffin, which doesn't actually synergize with the deck at all. Next, we're going to take out 1 Garrison Griffin for 1 Ardenvale Tactician. So the Garrison Griffin isn't a knight, but when it attacks, it gives one of our knights flying. I don't think that is terrible, but this isn't the type of card that I want 4 copies of in a deck, because what happens if you draw a handful of these Griffins? Well, you'll lose. You basically never want more than 1 or 2 of these in a game ever. It's something that can come into play and kind of win you a game by giving a creature flying, but you definitely don't want to see 3 of them in your opening hand. So I just think playing 4 copies is excessive. So we're replacing it with the Tactician, which is actually kind of similar. First off, it's a 3 mana 2/3 flyer instead of a 2/2 flyer. But the adventure also allows us to tap 2 of our opponent's creatures at instant speed. So this actually kind of plays the same role. The Griffin wants to give a knight evasion so we can punch damage through, and the Tactician will do the same thing by tapping a couple creatures so we can attack into the opponent. We only get 1 attack with the Tactician, sure, but remember that this is also going to get pumped up by Inspiring Veteran and spit out soldier tokens with the Worthy Knight. So I think this is going to work a lot better than having a full 4 copies of the Garrison Griffin. It still helps our knights get through, but it's also just going to synergize with the rest of our deck. I mean, if we have a couple Inspiring Veterans in play, this is a 4/5 flyer for 3, which the Griffin can just never be because it's a Griffin and not a knight. I also want to take out 1 more of the Griffins for an extra copy of a Clam Contender. This is mostly because I want to reduce the Griffin count down to 2. That way we still have the chance to get that evasion without having non-knights dragging the deck down. I just don't want this deck to be clogged up by these. I'm just looking on screen, it can't be tutored up with the Contender. It can't get buffed by Inspiring Veteran. It's not going to put a token out. It can't take a counter from Venerable Knight. Obviously the flying is nice, but it just doesn't have enough synergy, and I just want more knights. So I'm going to take this down to 2. You'll still have 2 in the deck, but I think a Clam Contender is just a great card. Giving you the ability to search for your best knight in any given situation is kind of great. And then we're also going to take out the Joust in the deck in favor of Prison Realm. So Joust is supposed to be a removal spell, but it's super clunky because it requires us to have a creature in play. Then that creature needs to be big enough to kill the creature we want to target after it gets +2/+1, and then there's still a chance that we lose the creature in the fight. So it's just not very reliable. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that needs to go in our favor in order for this to work as a removal spell. The Prison Realm is just much cleaner since it can remove any creature at any time no matter what. Basically, the only thing stopping this from taking a creature is if it has hexproof. So basically, we're going to get a creature with it. We're going to get the opponent's best creature, and it's going to be gone guaranteed. Though I must say, I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been going back and forth on it. There are auras that can lock down a creature, and these might actually be a better choice since they can be tutored up with a claimed contender. Being able to play the contender when we need to get rid of a creature, looking at the top 5 to see if we have one of these enchantments is actually kind of great. So I debated back and forth. I like that the Prison Realm completely removes the creature entirely, so it's better against lords or just cards with activated abilities. But I've been going back and forth between Prison Realm and auras with similar effects for the synergy with contender, and I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to go with Prison Realm for the sake of this video, but if you have any of these similar lockdown cards that are auras so they can be tutored up with contender, yeah, I think these are fine. Totally worth playing as well. Alright, we're almost done here. We're going to take out one mountain for one worthy knight, and we're doing this because the deck contains 25 lands, which is just too many. You very rarely need to play more than 24, so I'm happy to drop a land for just about anything, and worthy knight is just great in multiples since it allows you to pump out an army of soldiers even faster if you have more than one of them, so it's fine, why not? It's definitely better than getting mana flooded with this excessive land. And finally, we're going to take out 2 plains and 2 mountains for a playset of Tournament Grounds. I don't normally mess with lands in these Planeswalker decks, but this land is amazing and it's actually really cheap right now. Even though we aren't playing black, this land can produce red and white mana for knights, and it doesn't come into play tapped. So it's kind of amazing that we get to play a land this powerful for so cheap. It also gives us a starting point for Martyr Knights as well, and there are some powerful knights in black, but this is way too expensive for our budget upgrade guide, so we'll just be using this for red and white. But yeah, pretty good. Very cheap way to get a dual land into a budget deck, so definitely recommended. And that's it. That's all of our upgrades. Going forward with the deck, if you want to spend a little bit more money on this thing, the main card that's too expensive for this video is Fervent Champion. The price of this will probably drop as more of them are opened and enter the market, but currently they are a few dollars each and a little bit too expensive for us. It's a very fast and aggressive creature, even if we can't take full advantage of the equip ability, and this makes the deck pretty aggressive, and it also pairs well with Ember Cleave, though that is also kind of expensive, and I'm not 100% sure how to fit that into the deck, but you know, it's a thing. Cavalier of Flame is also kind of great, a 5 mana 6/5 that can pump itself and gain haste, as well as allowing you to ditch cards in your hand to draw more when you cast it, and it can deal some extra points of damage to the opponent when it dies if you ditched extra land cards when you cast it. It's pretty good, but the triple red scares me in this deck with so few dual lands. Even with Tournament Grounds, triple red could be a little bit tough, and these are still like, I think they're $2 to $3 each, maybe more, so yeah, a little bit too expensive for us, but something to consider. And speaking of dual lands, you can improve the mana base by replacing 2 mountains and 2 plains for some Sacred Foundries. Dual lands are fantastic, but they're also just a little bit expensive. You could also probably upgrade the tap lands in the deck with the Temple. They both come into play tapped, and some people might disagree, but I personally think that scrying is far more valuable than just gaining a single point of life. I like being able to control what I draw more than just having that one life, so that's something to consider as well. And another thing, improving the mana base allows you to take out weapon racks for true fire mentors. I think the mentors are 1,000,000% better than the artifact. It can continue to put counters on creatures while it's in play. It's going to get buffed by Inspiring Veteran and become a very big threat. It can dish out a ton of damage, not just by attacking either, but also by reflecting any damage it takes back at the opponent. It's kind of amazing actually, but the mana cost is really sketchy if the deck doesn't have at least like 10 to 12 dual lands. I just don't think you will be able to cast this thing reliably, considering that you have to have exactly 2 red and 2 white to cast it, but with Shocks, Temples, and Tournament Grounds, I think this is a lot safer to play, and it's actually quite good. And if you do have some of these more valuable cards to add, in my opinion the weakest cards in the deck at the moment are probably the Planeswalker deck package. Rowan's Bodyguard and Rowan's Stalwarts are pretty bad, and are really only there to synergize with Rowan. I mean, the Stalwarts are great for finding Rowan, but then it's just a 5/2, which isn't quite as good as, say, a Cavalier of Flame. I also want to point out that while Giant Killer is actually a pretty good card, it's not a knight, so it doesn't synergize with the rest of the deck. I don't think it's a terrible card, but it might be better as one of these auras that can lock down a creature. Even though I think these auras are less good in general, they're probably better in this deck specifically, just because they can be tutored up with Acclaimed Contender. So that's something to consider. And then of course you could go crazy by building an entire Mardu mana base and going into Mardu Knights. There are some very powerful knights in black, but that's a whole thing. I mean, it's probably easier just to build a Mardu deck from the ground up, and the mana base alone will be so expensive that at that point you might as well just build a tier 1 competitive deck. I mean, you're talking about, you know, you're gonna need a lot of shock lands and stuff, and it's just gonna be expensive. But yeah, anyway, that's it. That's the deck. This is all of our upgrades, and we did it for very cheap. I mean, we spent almost nothing for a deck that is significantly more powerful than what we started with. So not bad. So anyway, if you like this video and want to see more like it, I have an entire playlist dedicated to upgrading Planeswalker decks, and you can find a link to that in the description below. I also upgrade all Planeswalker decks as they come out, so be sure to subscribe for more of those in the future, including the Throat of Eldraine Oko deck, which will be coming very soon. I will also make gameplay videos for these decks, but those will be coming at a later date. But in the meantime, thanks for watching everyone. I hope this video was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.